So I do encourage you, of course, to keep Kathy and the rest of the Stewart family in your prayers. They've been going through a difficult time now for a little while, and Jim's received his reward today, and he was a faithful servant, and I was grateful to get the privilege of knowing Jim over these last many years, and he has sought to serve the church, and he's been an important part of our security here at the church, as well as just his involvement. And we're just at a loss when someone like that leaves us, and he had such a tough time there at the end, and so I'm praising the Lord this morning that he's receiving his reward. That's for certain. So I do want to encourage you to make sure that you join us for the next 2 Sundays, because you're going to find that good opportunities to hear some preaching that I think you'll appreciate. And this next Sunday is the 5th Sunday, so it's our Youth Sunday. That's the main purpose behind Dan being with us, and I believe the youth and Dan and Shane are going to do some things together after services, and so excited about that for them. So if you have a young person, have them be a part of that. If you would, that'd be great. I also want to encourage you to participate in our All-American cookout. Church takes care of the hot dogs and hamburgers and buns. We just ask that you bring all the good things that go with that. I've heard rumors there might even be some homemade ice cream at this event. I'm very sorry I'm not going to be here, I can tell you. In fact, I'd much rather be here than driving about 13 hours that day to get back home. And so you keep us in your prayers as we do travel, and know that we miss being here with you for that. And there was one more thing I wanted you to know. Can't think of it. That's all right.
This is happening a lot.
Yeah.
This is my life now.
Okay. Take your Bibles and your Bible apps, and you turn to 2 Corinthians. 2 Corinthians chapter 6. 2 Corinthians chapter 6. Verse 2 says this, "For he says, at the acceptable time I listened to you, and on the day of salvation I helped you. Behold, now is the acceptable time. Behold, now is the day of salvation." This will serve as kind of a key point in our message that I'm sharing today. And I begin by telling you that when you see a movie, when you see a film, you're seeing obviously the final result of some hard work to put that together. A film is actually made up of quite a few elements: special effects, editing, background music, sound mixing, CGI enhancement, the use of color and lighting, and so on it goes. And these elements are all built on the raw material of the real essence of the film, which of course is the actor's performance captured there on camera. And during the production of a movie, each day's work, each day's filming is quickly developed. It is synced to sound and delivered to the director the following day, and he looks this over. This is called the dailies. Have you ever heard somebody talk about the dailies? That's what the director does. He watches them, usually does so with the film crew so that he can evaluate each day's footage, ensuring that there were no technical problems and ensuring that the director is satisfied with the scene and so on. And dailies are actually pretty unimpressive by themselves. There are no special effects. The color is very basic. There's no background music, no enhancement of sound. It's just simply the actors giving their lines and playing their part. But it is in the dailies that make or break a film. You can spend a billion in post-production on special effects and studio tricks and great music, but if those dailies aren't any good, well, the film's not going to be any good. And I would tell you this morning, I believe you can look at life the very same way. There's this big picture, a very specific direction where you hope that everything is ultimately going and you want it all to add up to something meaningful, so that when it is over, people can look at everything you've done and say, wow, what a life, what a life. But a great life can't be manufactured with special effects or studio tricks. I want you to know it can only happen in the dailies. And this is one way that life is like a movie, and if you don't get the performance and the details right, well, then you can't get it in the film. And so that's why this series that we've been sharing over the last several weeks is so important, because it really comes down to the fact that it's all about the dailies. It's about establishing this rhythm of good habits in your day-to-day life so that your life can become an Oscar-winning performance. We've talked about the rhythm of gratitude. The more that you appreciate your life, the more your life will appreciate. We've talked about the rhythm of renewal, starting with each day in the presence of God. We've talked about the rhythm of responsibility, which is taking ownership of your attitudes and your schedule and your decisions every day. And we've talked about the rhythm of purpose, building each day around doing what it is that's most important. And today, we're concluding our series by talking about this rhythm of consistency. Of course, this might be the hardest of them all. It's not what we do once in a while that actually shapes our lives. It's what it is that we are doing consistently, right? You can't build a song around an inconsistent rhythm, and you can't build a life around inconsistent habits. So the big question is, how do you become consistent? How do you become consistent? Well, today we're going to talk about three principles that will actually help you to be able to develop this consistency in your life. And you may consider yourself the most inconsistent person in the world. And the truth is, everyone is inconsistent in one area or another. I've never met anyone who gets it right every single time, because they don't even come close. But the fact is that you will struggle with consistency for as long as you live, because it is a daily battle. And that's why it's essential, as we discussed 2 weeks ago, that you define what it is that really matters most to you, and that you decide that you're going to build your day around doing what really matters most to you, because it is in these things that matter most to you that you want to focus on if you're going to develop consistency. So we're going to share 3 truths about consistency that I'd like for you to adopt. And I'm going to pause right here, because I have remembered what it is that I wanted to tell you. When I return from vacation and begin preaching, I will be doing a series of sermons, more than just church. And this is leading up to a membership Sunday. We haven't had one of those for a few years, but we have quite a few folks that attend church here with us. And we want to encourage them to make decisions for Christ if that's something they need to do, but also to become a part of the church family officially. And we'll discuss what that means, what that looks like, but you'll hear a lot about it over the next several weeks. And leading up, and you be praying about those folks that are attending that might want to make this officially their church home. So join us over the summer as we tackle that subject, and we get us up to that point of our membership Sunday, okay? So just want you to be aware of that. All right, so 3 truths about consistency that you ought to adopt. And first of all, I want you to understand, consistency is the result of trying again. Consistency is the result of trying again. We usually think of consistency as getting it right every time, but that's not consistency. That's perfection, which is impossible, right? No basketball player makes the shot every time, but a consistent player hits a good percentage of his shots. It's the very same thing in baseball. Most of you in this room are probably old enough to remember Tom Seaver, right? You all remember Tom Seaver? He said that in baseball, my theory is to strive for consistency, not to worry about the numbers. If you dwell on statistics, you get short-sighted. If you aim for consistency, the numbers will be there at the end. And he certainly proved that was true. Now, what's he really talking about? Well, he's talking about the importance of you keep trying. Keep trying. If the numbers aren't there at first, they will be eventually, but you have to keep throwing the ball. There's a great verse in Proverbs for us to recall. It comes from chapter 24, verse 16. You might recognize it. It says, "For a righteous man falls 7 times and rises again, but the wicked stumble in a time of calamity." So the righteous are the ones who get back up and try again. Well, we're supposed to be the righteous. So I encourage you and remind you that we should get back up and try again. The wicked throws in the towel and goes home. There's been many times in my personal life I have to remind myself the difference between my being righteous or wicked, or being a good person or a bad person, or a wise man or a fool, is determined by whether or not I'm going to have the courage to get back up on my feet and give it another go. Do you want to be consistent in your Christian life? Well, then you need to know right up front that inevitably you are going to fall down more often than you want to, and the process is going to be harder than what you'd like for it to be. And it all comes down to your determination to get up and try again. Consistency isn't built in a day or a week or a month or even a year. If you want to be consistent, then you have to settle in for the long haul. You have to say, I'm going to continue to try and try and try again. And when I discover that I'm getting it right more often than I'm getting it wrong, I'm still going to keep on trying. Consistency is the result of you trying again. And if there's any area of your life where you're not as consistent as you would like to be, all you can do is make up your mind to try again and again and again. For as long as you live, consistency is all about this lifelong commitment to try again. Here's the second truth about consistency that I want you to see. It is never too late to do it right. Never too late to do it right. Earlier on in this series, I talked about you getting your day off to a right start. And ideally, that means you're going to wake up, you're going to get some coffee, you're going to get alone with God, you're going to spend some time in praise and thanksgiving and fellowship with Him, you're going to review your goals and your priorities and your purpose, and you're going to plan out your day, ideally. But this is the real world, isn't it? Sometimes you get up late. Sometimes your phone's ringing off the hook. Sometimes everything's hectic around you. Someone's having an emergency, or you've got this urgent thing to take care of, and you hit the door running, and it's way past lunch before you even get a chance to catch a breath. And when you finally do get a break, you think, well, boy, did I really mess up this day. And at that point, do you know what you can do? Well, you do what ideally that you would have done at the beginning of the day. You get alone and you get in the presence of God and you spend some time in prayer and praise and fellowship, and you commit the rest of your day to Him. That's what you do. And if you do this, if it's 1 o'clock in the afternoon or if it's at 8:30 at night, it's never too late to do it right, is it? If you're struggling to develop consistency in a relationship, and you catch yourself in the middle of conflict or overreacting to the way that you have a tendency to overreact, what should you do? Well, you could say, next time I'll deal with the problem differently. But why wait until the next time? You can do it now. You can say, let's stop right here and start over because I want to handle this problem the right way. A message you see in the Bible again and again and again is that it's never too late to start over. It's never too late to begin again. It doesn't matter if you've wasted the last 10 years of your life or the last 10 minutes. Don't wait any longer. You begin right now to do the things the way that they should be done. You know, how often have we said after the holidays, I'm going to start a new diet, right? Or when things slow down at the office, I'm going to get more organized. Or when I get this problem behind me, I'm going to get serious about pursuing my purpose in life. And if you're not careful, you will always be able to find an excuse to put off what really matters just one more day, and then another day, and then another. Henry Ford said this, I love this quote, "You can't build a reputation based on what you're going to do." In the same way, you can't develop consistency based on what you plan to do tomorrow because today is the day. Today is the day. In the book of 2 Corinthians, which we referred to at the beginning of the message, Paul talks about the new life that we have received in Christ Jesus and how we are like a new creation and how we've been reconciled to God and we have become actually ambassadors for the cause of Christ. And then Paul urges us not to receive this wonderful gift of grace in vain. And he goes on to say, just like in the text that I read earlier, behold, now is the acceptable time. Behold, now is the day of salvation. So he's saying, don't put off until tomorrow what God is giving you the opportunity to do this very day. Don't wait another hour or even another minute to start doing what it is that truly matters. 2 weeks ago, I talked about putting your life's purpose in writing, a mission statement, if you will, summarizing it in a single phrase so that it continues to remind you where you are and where you're going. Frequently, throughout your day, stop and remind yourself, what exactly is it that I'm supposed to be doing? Because we do this, and it helps us to stay focused, and when necessary, it helps us to get back on track. So here's what I'm saying. When it comes to you pursuing your purpose, there's no better time for that than right now. No better time than the present. In fact, I would even say that when it comes to pursuing your purpose, there is no other time but the present. You can't build a life based on what you plan to do on another day. You do it today. And it's never too late in the day or too late in your life to get on the right track. Well, this brings me to the third and final truth about consistency that I'd like for you to see today. And that's going through the motions is better than nothing at all. I did say that. Going through the motions is better than doing nothing at all. Listen to what I want to share with you about this. You might, some of you are old enough to remember the mantra from the 70s, if it feels good, do it, right? Many people have carried a version of that philosophy into their spiritual life. It's if it doesn't feel good, don't bother. In other words, that if I don't feel like worshiping on a given day, then why should I worship? I'm not going to get anything out of it, so there's no point in being a hypocrite. The truth of the matter is that preachers are partly to blame for this mentality because in our zeal to discourage people from just going through the motions, we end up accusing people of playing church if they don't get all involved and emotional every time we come into God's presence. So let me tell you something about worship and prayer, Bible study, ministry, holiness and obedience, and pursuing your life's purpose. Sometimes when you do these things, they come with a wave of emotion. But sometimes they don't. Sometimes you feel it. Sometimes you don't. And so when you're not feeling it, do you know what is the best thing that you can possibly do? Go through the motions. Because going through the motions, even when you're not full of emotions, is the way for you to build consistency. If you want to be healthy, you go through the motions of eating right, even when you don't feel like eating right. If you want a good relationship with your spouse and children, you go through the motions of treating them the way they deserve to be treated, even when you don't feel like that they appreciate anything that you do. And if you want God to be big in your life, then you go through the motions of spiritual discipline, even when it feels like He's far away. It is better when you can do these things with a bubbly feeling inside, isn't it? Of course it is. But that bubbly feeling comes and goes, but your commitment to doing right needs to be something that remains constant. It's continual. We forget sometimes that Jesus faced the very same temptation shortly before his death. Consider this. There he was with his disciples in the Garden of Gethsemane, and he says to them these words, "My soul is overwhelmed with sorrow to the point of death." And then the Bible tells us in Matthew 26, verse 39, "And he went a little beyond them, and he fell on his face and prayed, saying, 'My Father, if it is possible, let this cup pass from me. Not as I will, but as you will.'" You see, Jesus didn't feel like doing what he was about to do. And you could almost say he was going through the motions of obedience, even when his emotions were begging for a way out. Jesus certainly was consistent in his daily life because for him, doing good was more important than feeling good. And that's why I say, in spite of all our sermons to the contrary, going through the motions is not always going to be a bad thing. Going through the motions will actually help you to establish this pattern of consistency that we've been talking about in your life. It's the difference between living a life based on a whim or living a life that's based on purpose. It's the difference between living a life based on feelings and living a life that's based on your faith. It's the difference between living a life based on convenience and living a life based on obedience. It's not what you do once in a while that shapes your life. It's not what you do only when you feel like it that shapes your life. It's what you do consistently that makes you who you are. So when necessary, you choose to go through the motions. Do what's right, even when you don't feel like doing what's right. Let me close. There's this human tendency that we have to get caught in a cycle of self-destructive behavior, and I think we all know what that's like. But today I'm preaching about the opposite. I'm preaching about creating a cycle of self-constructive behavior day in and day out, developing habits that will actually take you to where you want to go in life. It's the rhythm of consistency. It's a lifelong process. It's not something you could achieve in a week or a month or a year. It's something that you can only achieve in a day, this moment. So that's why Paul told us not to receive God's grace in vain. He says, "Behold, now is the acceptable time. Behold, now is the day of salvation." Life is all about those dailies. They're the foundation of a blockbuster film, and they're the foundation for a blockbuster life. I believe this series can help you define the rhythm of the ideal day for you, which is a day spent in pursuit of God's purpose for your life. And now that you know what a day looks like, go back and do it again and again and again. And if you fall or fail in the process, you just get up and try once more. If your day gets off to a bad start, you put on the brakes, you start again the very minute. If you don't feel like you want to feel, well, then you do what's right anyway. Go through the motions and follow the routine because your feelings will take care of themselves soon enough. I believe these will help you to develop a life of rhythm with God's plan for you. A life that is most important of all, spent in His presence, fulfilling His purpose and His power at work in you. Amen? That's my message this morning.